Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 206. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in South Carolina, we have a very, very special guest, Ed Martin. Ed, how are you?
Doing good, man. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to hop on this podcast and just share my story and, hopefully to inspire just one person.
Hey, I know that you will inspire more than just one person with your story, and I'm excited to dig in. But before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself to people listening who might not know who you are?
Yeah. I'm Edwin Martin. I'm 25 years old, live in Charleston, South Carolina. I guess you would call myself an endurance athlete. Do a lot of crazy challenges. But I like to say that, I'm not just an ultra marathoner. Like for every single race, every single event that I do, I'm going to give back in some sort of form. I always like to just say, I like to do these things. These things are awesome. But whatever I do it for a reason that's greater than myself. I'm going to give back in some shape or form. So I guess, ultra marathon runner, but more than so, I like to give back in everything that I do. And that vehicle is just me doing hard things.
I love it. Now, this will get into your story a little bit, and then, of course, we'll dive in later. But if you had to strip running away, let's say hypothetical, you can never run again.
Mm-hmm.
How are you different because of that? Or who are you beneath that?
Yeah, mercy. First and foremost, I'm a child of God. Running can be taken away from me, but I know my identity is secure in Christ. I'm just grateful that He chose running to be in my vehicle to advance His kingdom. But if running got taken away from me, nothing would change. The way that I live, the way that I treat others, my purpose on this earth, it wouldn't change. Running just so happens to be the outlet and the vehicle that I use to just inspire people, help people in their walk with the Lord. There's just a lot of reasons that, and it's very easy to go down that trap of making your identity your sport. And you see a lot of like hard transitions, people coming out of college, out of high school, because their identity is in that sport, and you can't play that sport forever. You can't do it. And if you make your identity surrounded by that, you're going to feel empty every single time.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so I figured I'll just ask you the first big question because I think any other question I would ask would bleed into your story anyway. And so when you look back on your life through these first 25 years, Ed, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would definitely say there was a season in my life where I wanted to take my own life. Like I truly just didn't want to be here anymore. I was down in the dumps, just going through a couple rounds of addiction, just in terms of some bad habits that I was walking through. And obviously I didn't choose that. I didn't ask for it. But there was just a point in my life where I just felt completely lost, so empty, and just like really just questioning myself if my life mattered, and that's such a scary place to be because from the outside looking in, like everything can look fine. Like I'm never gonna treat anyone bad, so no one knows if I'm like off in a way. Then that's why when I was able to be so vulnerable with people and be really intentional and, share my heart, share my feelings and actually speak up rather than keeping my emotions boggled up, it just unlocked just a spirit of vulnerability that is contagious, because someone's always battling something, you just don't know. And that's why it's so important to be intentional with every single person that you walk into, because someone is definitely fighting a battle that you have no idea about. And that's why, just within my story, I thought it wasn't cool to open up. I thought it wasn't cool to talk about our feelings. Rather than I would just bottle it up because that's what the world says to do is be a man, pick up everything and just go. It's cool. We're gonna get through that. Yeah, going back to that season, and that's just where I met the Lord, and He just met me in a place where I was just completely deprived of everything. I tried everything in this world that was going to help fulfill that void in my heart and that realization. I thought my life didn't matter. Um, and just to encourage someone out there, like your life isn't random, and it's not accidental, and you are here for a reason. And it's not our life to throw away because our life was already bought at a price, and it's created with such purpose and so specifically, uniquely made, every single one of us, crafted in the image of God, which is just so beautiful to think about and realize that. So, yeah, definitely that season of life where I didn't want to be here anymore, but praise the Lord that He still has me here.
Yeah. So I'm excited for our conversation for a few reasons. And one of those reasons is because I think faith will be a consistent thread that both of us can talk to.
Hmm.
I have a quote from C.S. Lewis here who said, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the
Hmm.
most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. And yeah, you and I are recording this conversation on Good Friday,
Hmm.
and it just you know I would love to hear for you what your life looked like before faith, and then we can get into what it was more in more specific terms that brought you to faith.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, man, I was just, I grew up in, I guess you would say a Christian household, but I didn't know Jesus. I had no idea the sacrifice that He paid on the cross. I had no idea. And I was just living through the motions, just one foot in the world, one foot out. And if someone asked me and said, "Are you a Christian?" I would say 100%. But I was still at the bars doing all these things that the world says to do. And I didn't know that. And truly, someone explained to me the simple, sober gospel of like Jesus died on the cross and He rose again for you. And every single sin that you're going to commit, he wiped it all on the cross when He was dying for you. And just like understanding the magnitude of that, of like, Jesus doesn't want just like 1% of your heart. He wants 99%. I mean, He wants 100%, excuse me. Not 99, He wants 100. And realizing that it takes full surrender. Like your life isn't your own. Your life is on mission to advance the kingdom. And actually just understanding the magnitude and the weight of that, of like we are here on this side of heaven for such a blink of an eye. And when it's gone, like it's gone. And the way that I ask people of like, what's your faith? And I'm just like, the number one question I ask people is, if you were to die today on a scale of 1 to 10, how positive are you that you're going to go to heaven? And the answer is usually like 5 or 6, 7, 8. And then I'm like, the answer is just astounding. It's, did Jesus die for 5, 6, 70, 80% of your sins? And just understanding that, like, wow, actually, every single sin that I was going to commit, He knew that I was going to commit. He paid it on the cross for us. So just understanding the weight of that. And before I knew the gospel and surrendered my life to the Lord, I just was bowing down to the world, man. Every single thing, the partying, the hookup culture, like everything that the world threw at me, I took at it. And because I thought it was gonna fill that God-shaped hole in my heart every single time. But rather than, picking up my cross and following after Jesus, I was the Lord of my own life. I was just literally I made myself my idol. I'm like, yeah, this world revolves around me. I'm gonna serve myself and nobody else. So just the Lord's just taught me a lot in 23 years since I've been saved. So, or 2 years since I've been saved. But yeah, I lived about 23 years of my life not truly having a life that's sought out for the Lord. So just praise the Lord for the redemption story in my life. So praise the Lord.
There are people listening to this who are resonating already. There are people listening to this who maybe are considering, hey, maybe this episode's not for me. And I would
Mhm.
encourage everyone listening to stay, especially if you've been through seasons where you've felt alone, down, lost, etc. And I think your story is a beautiful example of living in a way that maybe is not so aligned with living out your faith. And then having this dark season, this hard season, it
Mhm.
sounds like that brought you into a greater faith. And so I'd be curious to hear what it was about the depths, the lows that you were in that ended up, pushing you closer to Christ.
Yeah, really good question. So I was struggled with a lot of gambling addictions in college, and I carried that into the year after I graduated. And I literally just was sitting there one day. I was literally just got out of the shower, and I was like, God, if you're real, show me your power, show me that you're real. Literally within probably 5 minutes, my buddy out of nowhere, who I hadn't literally talked to in so long, just said, I love you, bro. God has such good plans for you. Literally within 5 minutes of that. And it's just so cool to say that, to see how the Lord shows up in those moments of just crying out to him, because if not, like every single time, like we are going to be, whether we believe it or not, we're going to be bowing down to the King of Kings every single time. And that just happened to be my moment of like, God, if you're real, reveal yourself. And he doesn't need to reveal himself to me because he's omnipresent. He's the God of the universe. But he did in that moment, that my faith sparked of like, wow, he's real. Within that little nudge, he used another person to express his love through him by telling me how much I'm loved and how much I'm seen and how much I matter on this earth. Because that moment was that moment where I was about to take my own life. So just seeing just God's provision in that moment of him sending someone else to send me a simple text message literally just deepened my faith of like, wow, God is real, and God is omnipresent over everything.
There's this excerpt from a book that I'll just read. It's one sentence, but it says, "Suffering brought my own emptiness and
Mhm.
God's fullness together."
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I'm low in particular, or when I feel like I've been humbled or I feel like I'm down, it in a way is a really special blessing because it allows me to be open to
Mhm.
this truth that, without God, I am nothing. And,
Yeah.
by myself, I am weak. I'm a human, right?
Hmm.
And I think feeling that humanness sometimes
Hmm.
is really important.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you, at this low point, were able to receive this greater love. And so, from that point, what did it look like to move forward with this realization that, God loves you, God is there?
Yeah. So obviously picking up your cross and following Jesus, every day is hard. It's a battle, and your life is not radically going to change. I mean, definitely it's going to get harder, but it's worth it. And knowing that, and, finding peace that, I know where I'm going when I die, and resting in that peace and resting assured that I know my mission on this earth now. And I spent 23 years of my life being a knucklehead, doing whatever I wanted, and realizing that my life isn't even already my own. It was bought at a price, and understanding that magnitude of that, of like us as humans, we have one life, and that's so many people just don't know the gospel, what Jesus did for us. And now just living in freedom that my life was paid for, and just understanding the weight of the Father's love is just was such a beautiful realization for me and for anyone out there listening. I just open your Bible, and you can see God's promises. You can see His heart for you. Um, and people just have a lot of just hurt in churches, and the American culture just has kind of just made church just such a bad perception in a way of like, I don't want to do it, and I want to go on Christmas and Easter, and that's it. Um, Rather than that, but like just, and for me personally, getting plugged into a church was that next step for me, just knowing that I can do life with these people, and we are supposed to carry each other's burdens, and having people in my corner that if they see me slacking off, they see me, drowning something, putting an idol over something over the Lord, they're going to call me out, and having those people that are going to call you higher and hold you accountable to every area of your life, even the deepest, darkest of sins, bringing that into the light, it changes everything. And even in this season right now, it's been so beautiful finding such a beautiful church family that, the pastor of the church isn't any different than me. He's just another dude. He's just the shepherd flocking his sheep, and having that realization of we are supposed to do this life together as a community, as he calls us to, and advance the gospel together. So just finding a good community and a good godly community is most important to me, because there is, a lot of stuff out there. And I've been in, communities that, just like, yeah, everyone is starving for community, but unto what? Is it fitness? Like, what is the backbone of that? And where are you going with that? I always challenge people with, like, I want to start a run club. Like, what's your reasoning? There's hundreds of out there. Like, what are you doing it unto? How are people going to grow in their faith, in their life, like how are they going to get poured into? Because if it's just bringing people together, other than having a backbone of unto the Lord and having a stern reason for it, it's going to trickle out, and not being able to flock more people because Jesus brings people in together. It's not going to be anything that we can say as humans.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and this episode will come out after the annual Project Endure event, but something I'm going to speak about is that everything that we want is on the other side of hard.
Mhm.
And sometimes
Yeah.
that could be a big race or, making a career switch or this massive thing. But a
Mhm.
lot of times hard is subtle, it's quiet, it's small. And I was talking with a friend from church, and he kind of, I don't know, he sparked this thought in me that actually, following Jesus is hard, like
Mhm.
everything, right? On a day-to-day basis, doing those small things, putting our human desires aside and choosing to go in that other direction. That's hard.
Yeah.
And, use the phrase taking up your cross. What are some of the hard things for you when it comes to walking that walk, every day?
Yeah. That's a really good question, man. And I would say um, definitely choosing discipline and obedience every single day.
Mm,
Um, because just living a life that's sought out for the Lord, there's so many like little decisions that you don't think that you have to die to yourself every single day of choosing something that's going to honor God in everything that I do rather than taking the easy way out. Rather that's getting a nudge from the Holy Spirit of like, just ask that person how they're doing. Go pray for them. Like being so aware and cognizant in the voice of the Lord that's in your head of like, whatever he tells me to do, I'm going to go do it, because it's so, and it just kind of ties back into fitness because it's so easy to be motivated when you feel good, when you wake up and you're ready to go crush that workout. But what on the days where you're sore and you're like, you have to get it done, um, but you just don't feel like it, man. And that's just what I would say is it's choosing discipline and obedience is a big word for me. Just continue to be obedient every single day. And a prayer that I pray every single day is God, get in my head before I get in my own.
mm,
Truly, because you think about it every single day of how often are we just constantly and constantly and constantly just thinking of like how often do we get our own way and we're getting on our own way so much we can't even see what God wants to do with us because we are getting on our own way. We spend 12% of our daily consumptions and thoughts comparing ourselves to others. That's 12%. Like that is an absurd number throughout the day of our daily thoughts every single day. And that just goes to show comparison is the thief of joy every single time. So I'd say, yeah, just choosing discipline and obedience every single day for me.
oh man, that's so good. There's a quote that I'll throw out here just because it goes on the theme of comparison. It's from an author who I'm not even going to pronounce this name, I'm sure, even close to how it's supposed to be pronounced. But Fyodor Dostoevsky said, the deepest form of slavery is the hunger for being understood by others.
Yeah.
And I think that willingness to be understood, to be
Mhm.
accepted,
Yeah.
along with the comparison, drains so many people of so much energy.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, you give a lot of energy to the things that matter to you, and
Mhm.
fitness is one of those things.
Yeah.
I can see that from afar. I'm excited to talk about that with you. Now, I'll lead in with this next question. Your answer does not have to be related to fitness, although it could
Mhm.
be. But when you look at your life to this point, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why did you do that thing?
Yeah. Really good question. And it kind of ties back to what we just talked about. I could sit here and say 24 hours on a treadmill, running across South Carolina. I could list all these feats that I've done and that I chose it on purpose. And those are all good things. But there's just so much more to life than that. And for me, it's choosing obedience and choosing to be disciplined every single day. Um, and I know we just talked about that, but it's just so important. And it's just like so easy to go all in on whatever your dreams, your aspirations are when everyone's watching. But like, even for me, like getting into endurance and growing in my faith, I'm just like, I have no spotlights on me. I have no attention on me. And I don't need it. And I'm the type of guy who just like wants to do his own thing. Like, I don't like the attention and the spotlight, but like, if the Lord's calling me to it, I am. I can't say no. I can't put a stiff arm up to it because obviously he's calling me into it and just being aware of that. So just waking up every single day and choosing discipline because I just don't think discipline just has a right definition in this country, if you will, just because people just don't understand that it's a choice to choose it. With everything, and it breeds out in so many areas of your life, and it ties into your spiritual walk, it ties into your physical walk, it ties into your mental health. Just being aware of that, and if you're not aligned on all three, you're going to be in this spin cycle, this just rat race every single time of searching of like, well, where did this fall short? Where did this? What am I thriving in? Just being aware of all three categories of your life makes such a massive difference. So for me, it's choosing that discipline of, some decisions that I just might not feel like doing it, but I told myself I was going to do it. I'm going to be a man of my word. I'm going to serve others before myself, and choosing that every single day rather than being disobedient and just saying, no, I'm good because this is going to benefit me more than the other person who I know I need to do something, and just being aware of all three categories of my life, my physical health, my spiritual walk, and my mental health every single day. So that would be just, I mean, it's a daily surrender every single day, being aware of all those three things and choosing discipline every single day with every decision that I make.
I'm a big fan of everything you just said, and I would like to think of myself as a disciplined person. And
Mhm.
I think people in my life would label me as that. And
Yeah.
yet, I'm not perfect. I know
Mhm.
you're not perfect. Nobody is perfect. We all
Yeah.
have those moments where we fall short of
Mhm.
doing the things we said we were going to do. And what I notice through conversations on the podcast, the coaching work that I do, et cetera, is that there are people who beat themselves up quite a
Yeah.
bit. They get in their head, they get stuck in this rut of, negative self-talk, et cetera, et cetera. How do you move past those moments where maybe you weren't as disciplined as you hoped you would be, or you didn't hit the standard that you have set for your life?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good question as well. And I tell people all the time when I throw these crazy goals out there, I shoot my shot, I say I'm going to do it. But there also is being so aware of giving yourself grace to an point. And I'm not saying abusing that. And just like people abuse the grace of God, don't abuse the grace that you are bestowing upon yourself within those little decisions because, yeah, you want to throw your goals out there and a lot of that, like the big, massive, milestone moments. But when you have those little, just small decisions that continue to pile up and pile up and pile up, you're just going to be like so overwhelmed of like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Just giving yourself grace, but a healthy amount of grace to be able to say, I messed up and we're going to continue to fall short every single day. We're going to screw up. We're going to sin. But rather than, just saying, well, I fell off the wagon, it's being able to hop back on the wagon, giving yourself grace and say, I screwed up. I fell short, but I'm going to keep pressing on. I'm going to keep running my race well, and I'm going to keep being faithful to whatever that is, whether that's a running race, like just a hard conversation, a business, like having your roots so rooted in, yes, giving yourself grace, but being ambitious about whatever that goal is, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get there, no matter what, rather than, calling your shot, shooting that, go for that goal, failing, and then falling flat on your face and staying there, rather than getting back up, getting back on the wagon and keep moving. Like the train's not stopping, you just gotta hop back on it. So just being aware of those situations of giving yourself grace, but also not abusing that because that's where people just give up on themselves is, oh, grace, 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 but not being able to hop back on that wagon and keep pressing forward to whatever that goal is.
Beautiful answer. So, what I'll do here is I'm going to read another quote. This one's from Ryan Holiday. And then I do want to tie this into the 24 hours on the treadmill because I
Mhm.
think that one is interesting to people. Also, I'm sure there are insights that have come out of that. And so, the Ryan Holiday quote is, work is finding yourself alone at the track when the weather kept everyone else indoors. Work is pushing through the pain and crappy first drafts and prototypes. It is ignoring whatever platitudes others are getting, and more importantly, ignoring whatever platitudes you may be getting, because there is work to be done. Work doesn't want to be good. It is made so despite the headwind. So, that idea of showing up at the track, it's raining, nobody else is outside, Right. Those moments exist. And you even referenced earlier, it's important to be disciplined, even when, especially when no one else is watching. And
Mhm.
so I would imagine there were so many of those moments leading up to this prep for 24 hours in the treadmill. So let's start with this. Why? Why did you do 24 hours in the treadmill? Second, what did the prep look like? And then third, tell us about the experience.
Yeah. So first question, why did I do it? It was completely random idea. I literally was in kind of a standstill of races, kind of deciding. I knew I had a race. I knew I had a 100 miler in May, but I kind of wanted to do something beforehand. So I was literally on the treadmill and just speaking it out loud. I hate the treadmill. Like I just despise it. It's good for speed work, but other than that, like when it's cold outside or bad weather, but
Yeah.
that's not an excuse. So I literally was on the treadmill praying. I was like, Lord, just give me someone that I need to get back to. Like just put that person in my life, put that nonprofit in my life that is in need of financial help. So I just sat on it for 2 days, didn't speak it out loud, just was thinking in my head of treadmill and 24. Didn't really know what that meant. And then just really prayed and just thought on it for about a day and a half. And I was like, and I said it out loud. I told my roommate, I was like, I'm going to run for 24 hours on the treadmill. And I'm going to find a local nonprofit that needs help in this season. Um, and it was just so cool how the Lord worked this all out because the nonprofit that I worked or that I gave back to is a mental health nonprofit called Quest Recovery in the local area. And they worked with college students, formulating those groups together in different events and whatnot. And they just started working with my alma mater, the Citadel in Charleston. So that already was like a special place in my heart because I just feel such a calling to give back to those kids and go pour into them. So as soon as they told me that they were doing that, and I already knew the owner or the founder of the nonprofit. So having all that tied in was just so cool of like, I literally prayed that prayer and within 2 days, the pieces just started to fall and fall and fall. And it ended up turning into this big community event and just seeing how insane the people showed up for me. But the coolest thing about this. It was one, the people that showed up for me. Two was the way that I was able to share my story because even on my social media and stuff, I wasn't able to. I don't know if it was just not being vulnerable enough, but sharing my story of me almost taking my own life and the way that it just because they had an event they just hosted this past Sunday called Sound of Mind. And it was basically just this big suicide awareness event. Just really vulnerable, intentional event with a lot of people. It was a concert, but just a lot of just speakers and whatnot. And I was able to raise money for them to have that event at that space, which is super cool to see that, the money that I raised went to something that was beneficial for the community. Um, but just overall getting to see like that just switch just being flipped for me to be so vulnerable and open in my story and getting to share my story on social media and just allowing so many people to receive that and like know that it's okay to share their story and that their story does matter. Everyone behind the lens and behind the view of a human, they have a story behind that. And a lot of people would just say that, I don't have this crazy story like you do. I don't have this radical transformation. I don't do these crazy things, but every single person has a unique twist to their story. Just being able to just ask them and making them feel seen and loved. And that's by asking them, share me your story. How can I just receive something and be inspired by your story, something that I can use to benefit my life, someone else's life by sharing your story. And that starts with vulnerability of everything you've been walking through. Because at least one person is going to resonate or be inspired by your story in some shape or form. And that's just what unlocked that for me from this treadmill challenge and planning it and having a why behind that was able to articulate that on social media and getting to share my story in terms of posting videos and stuff. It was just super cool to see just it all come together by just having a simple idea on a treadmill.
Yeah. And to your credit, before we get into the prep for something like this, I
Hmm.
think having a big idea is one thing, executing on it
Hmm.
is another.
Yeah.
And I put on events, I hold, activities where people come and say, "Hey, I'll be there," or
Mhm.
"Hey, I can't make it this time." And one of the things that has always been hard for me is when people don't show up for something that I've put on or something that I care about really. And I'm just sharing this because hopefully someone out there can take something from this, but it ties back into our faith conversation,
Mhm.
which is when I create something and I might feel disappointment that someone didn't show up for me or for this thing that I care about, I have to remind myself that I'm not the center of the universe.
It's
And
good.
so even though I care about this thing, right, the world does not revolve around me and it's not about me in the first place.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this challenge, this treadmill challenge is way bigger than you. And it's so cool how you stepped into that. And of course, how people show up and support that. And before we get to the actual 24 hours, so how did you prep for it? Because 100 mile, well, I won't give anything away. You can share how much distance you did. 24 hours on a treadmill is insane. How did you prepare?
Yeah, so like people have been asking me like, what'd you do? Like, was this a crazy prep? It was literally 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks of running on treadmill, no runs outside. I already had a good base going into this. So when people ask me, oh, like you would be surprised at the amount of DMs and messages I've gotten from people like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And I just put like a hard, not a hard stop. I always encourage, but like just to be aware of like how actually nuts it is. And it was hard for me to realize that at first. But I had a 6.5 week prep of running nothing but treadmill miles. I had already had a base of 50 to 60 miles, but I went to 70 miles or started at 80 miles and then and I peaked at 120 and did ultra marathons, a 50K, a 40 miler, and then a 50 miler, back to back to back weeks. Because I literally just wanted to see how bad it was going to suck, and I just threw myself in the fire. I was like, I'm going to go 50K, body feels good. We're going to go 40, and then we're going to go 50, and then I'm going to start to taper down. So doing those back to back to back ultra marathons, on a treadmill in a row, in 3 weeks was gnarly. But I was just my body just naturally recovers really well. So being able to just see my body responding really well to the volume and the high volume because it was 4 weeks of 100-mile weeks, in a row. So just being able to respond and then having just being healthy going into it was the biggest thing. Um, but just yeah, getting used to the treadmill and the boring, lonely hours of the night because obviously I'll get into the treadmill run, but I didn't spend a single hour alone running on the treadmill, and I wanted to make the conditions hard in the training, knowing that it's going to be that much easier when I was starting the actual event because I knew, people were going to show up for me. Just them giving them my word and just people loving me, my church community, I knew that they're going to show up for me. So the prep was like not as long as people think it was. It was just literally just a spontaneous idea that we turned into an event really quick, which was just super cool, to see that. But just like going back to your point of, building these events and stuff, like I definitely did feel a weight of pressure of, what if these people aren't going to show up? Like the numbers, like chasing all the things that just don't matter of, you know, 20 people, 30 people, just like stuff that just literally doesn't hinder what I was doing and going back to my why. And that's just having to eliminate those thoughts in my head of like, if two people show up, I'm grateful, like, because this isn't about me, this is about a purpose bigger than myself. And just like you said, man, this life ain't about us and it never will be. And having that hard posture going into whatever you do is gonna give you a lot of peace, with whatever you do in your life.
That is so well said. And before we talk about the 24 hours, I just have to go back for people listening who, are getting into running or don't run, or maybe you do run, but you've never really thought about what 60 miles a week even looks like.
Mhm.
That is a place where most people will never get, let alone 120 miles in a week. And just to put that into perspective, because when I think about it, this is how my mind works. I think, all right, let's just say, and I'm sure this isn't how you did it, but let's just say you took off Sunday. So you got
Mhm.
6 days to run 120 miles. That's 20 miles a day for 6 days in a row. That's an insane amount of running volume. What did you do to occupy your mind on a treadmill for 120 miles in a week?
Yeah. A lot of time listening to worship sets on my phone, a lot of time spent on the phone, calling people, checking in, random people. A lot of music. Didn't really watch, I don't think I watched one movie on the treadmill. Literally was just trying to worship and, be present as much. But when it got to the point of probably like week 2 of prep, it was just clockwork, man. I just knew my mission. I knew it was 10 miles a day at least on the treadmill. Um, I knew I was going to be on there for a while. And, just being able to, and a thing that I like to say is that I like to train the I don't want to do it muscle a lot, just every single over and over and over, just build those reps every single day. And it was cool because I did it at my gym and I would just get crazy looks of like, dude, do you ever get off this thing? Like, do you ever get off this thing? I was there at the same time every single day for 6 weeks. Like, literally didn't travel, didn't do anything. I was there. Like, if people came in that hour of the gym, I was there. So it was just super cool to just like laugh with people, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was just crazy to like answer all these questions of like, so you're actually going to do this? Like, when is it? And I was like, yeah, March 12th, like over and over and over for 6 weeks. And then getting to see just like the feedback and the nice words from people of like, dang, you actually did it. I've seen you grinding here for 6 weeks, over and over and over. Didn't steer away from your goal and you kept showing up regardless for 6 weeks straight. And I was like, just like wanted to encourage people within that every single time they came up to me. I was like, yeah, just find whatever it is, find your heart, find your goal, find something that's attainable and reach for you and just go after it. And it's just been so cool to see all the messages, the DMs, and the comments from people of just being inspired by that. And that's my ultimate goal is to, if I can inspire just one person, it's a win in my books.
Yeah, it's about the impact. And
Mhm.
so, speaking of impact, this thing you did inspired people, and this was 24 hours on a treadmill. So, take us through, I don't know, any of the highlights, the takeaways, the insights, the things that really stand out to you.
Yeah. It was 100% the hardest physical thing that I've done, like without a doubt. Even just doing some crazy ultra marathons around the track, yada yada yada. Like the list could go on, but it was 100% the most physically hardest thing I've ever done. Just kind of to give you a little walkthrough, early on, my stomach flipped. Like early, I made the bonehead decision of using a gel that I haven't been used to in a while. So bit the bullet very early within that. I switched gels for those 4 extra carbs because I thought they were going to make a massive difference, which was a bonehead decision on my end, but I paid the price really quick. Within the first hour, I was like, yeah, my stomach feels a little wonky. So stomach turn within the first 3 to 4 hours of that, and just having to go to the bathroom and just really just flip my nutrition strategy on my head because my plan was to go liquids until midnight. I started at 6 p.m. to put it into perspective. And that just went out the window, like quick. I wasn't able to get all that stuff down without going to the bathroom immediately, like within the next 10 minutes of taking a gel. So I had to completely adjust that, which led to me not wanting to eat solid foods early on because I knew that was going to affect my stomach, but I had to, or else I was going to be in such debt of calories going into the wee hours of the night. But the first couple hours, I mean, the energy was high, just the lights were bright, everyone was there for the first couple hours. So it wasn't that bad until like around midnight to 3 a.m. was probably my worst stretch. I was probably 75, 80 miles in around there at that time. And uh, I had like a stretch where there's only a couple people in the middle of the night, and we just got into some bad lack of calories and started throwing up like a ton, like probably 20 times in a row. And the craziest part, I tell people, and a lot of people don't know this yet, because I haven't done like a just sit down like breakthrough of the treadmill yet, is I was throwing up blood for probably 10 times in a row. And a buddy in in the restroom was like convincing me that it was raspberries. And I was like, yeah, it's raspberries. So I believed that. And I was like, yeah, it's raspberries. Even though I could taste the metal in my mouth. And obviously, throwing up blood is definitely a sign of rhabdo. So I'm like, I can't do rhabdo. So if I would have, and that's just crazy, the ultra marathon, the little decisions, if I would have convinced myself that it was blood, I would have been cooked. I would have had to end it there because I'm going to get rhabdo if within that. But somehow, by the grace of God, I was able to drink water, get some calories in, and feel like a brand new man after that. So just looking back on that of like, I shouldn't like on paper, I should not have finished that. I should have been cooked at 100 miles and been done rather than running 33 more, finishing with 133 miles. Like that. There's just on paper, it just doesn't check out. And that's why when people ask me, I'm like, yeah, my strength comes from the Lord, and He was able to give me that strength. And I promise you, it wasn't for me. Because if it was for me, I would have been flat on the floor in the bathroom, probably still just laying there in pain within my stomach. So yeah, that was probably one of the worst stretches And other than that, man, it was just a battle with my stomach all day. Like, you know that feeling, I'm sure, as you do with running and your stomach, it just feels off all day.
Yeah.
And there was never any peace about that. And there was you get like a little bit of relief, but other than that, it wasn't anything to hang your head about. Just felt good.
Yeah.
So it was literally 22 hours of just constant stomach pain in some shape or form, and nothing was able to just overtake that. And just I wasn't able to eat just a lot of solid foods that I planned on eating, so I was just having to adjust, and it led to me literally getting spoon-fed peanut butter for hours upon hours. And you take that with what you will, with calories and that fat, just density of that peanut butter is just so nasty, and it cringes me to even think about that right now. But um, yeah, man, it was insane. And like I still like to this day, it's been 3 weeks, and I still haven't even been able to sit down and just like process hour by hour by hour. It's hard, but just like being so not cognizant of that, like after 100 miles, I'm just like, yeah, what people tell me, I remember. But other than that, it's like people are telling me stories and I'm going to try to remember it. But there was just so much going on within that. It was unreal, man.
Yeah. I mean, one, when slash if you do that breakdown, I would be curious to hear the hour by hour,
Hmm.
because I'm sure there's so much more to it than what we're able to capture here in a
Yeah.
couple minutes.
Hmm.
But at the end, right, on social media, I saw pictures, videos. It looked like there was a lot of emotion at
Okay.
the end. Tell me, and I'm picturing this picture on your social media where you're kind of down on a knee on the
Hmm.
treadmill or next to it,
Yeah.
hand on your face, or right, you're clearly emotional. What's
Yeah.
going through your mind when you finish this thing?
Yeah. Really good question. And it was a lot of gratitude, man. It was a lot of gratitude. I just immediately dropped to my knees and just prayed. I was like, God, thank you for saving me. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been here anymore. Literally, I wouldn't have had this opportunity to run on the treadmill. I wouldn't be here to spread the light of sharing people that their story matters and that they have a place on this earth. And the amount of pain, just combined is just like the emotions that I couldn't even like control if I wanted to. And it was just so beautiful just to let all my emotions out all at once because I just immediately wanted to give thanks to the Lord. And I just couldn't really grasp the magnitude of like what just went down because the reason I was doing it, it played a big part in my story and just constantly reminding myself of me in that dark place, just getting flashbacks of like where I was and now what I'm doing and just like looking back at God's faithfulness and his provision in my life. It just brings you to tears, man, because if I wouldn't have prayed that prayer, if I wouldn't have done that thing, if my buddy wouldn't send my text, there's so many things wrapping back to my why. And it just gets me every time. And there's no way that I could just sit there and be just stoic of like running 24 hours on the treadmill. And I just keep going back to, if just one person can be inspired to keep going and knowing that their story matters. And, I'll get, hundreds, thousands of comments of people, oh, this bozo, like, how is this raising awareness for suicide and all this stuff? And I'm just like, I literally just put myself out there to show that people are loved and that their story matters, and I'm giving back to my community that is going to go to resources to help people who are fighting the fight. And that's what I just go back to my why of like, if my physical pain that I'm experiencing on this treadmill, this mental battle is nothing compared to some of these battles that these people are facing every single day, tempting and giving that thought of ending their own life every single day because I've been there, and just like wrapping it all around, knowing that I've been in these people's shoes, doing something hard that's going to inspire people just to keep going, make it one more day, make it one more step, make it one more hour. It makes it all worth it because my why was so big and it tied into my personal testimony. It was just waterworks, man. It was waterworks, and it gets me every single time to even think about it because just seeing the Lord's hand in my life and knowing that he truly saved me out of a pit of misery that I was in just leaves me in awe of his provision for my life in the way that he just had such good plans and a bigger purpose for me in that moment, my deepest, darkest moment, that I knew that I was still made and called for more. And that's why he kept me here. It wasn't me. If it was up to me, I wouldn't be here. It was God saving me out of that pit of misery. So just all that emotion, it was just unreal. And every single ounce, every single tear that I cried, like it was so much purpose in that and so much just vulnerability that, like I said, man, I've always been a very vulnerable person, but I mean, this really just unlocked a level of like, I'm going to share every deepest, darkest detail of my life, because someone out there is facing something very similar that I walked through.
Something you just said sparked a connection in my mind to this clip of a sermon that I came across within the last year. And the guy has either a Scottish or an Irish accent. I'm sorry for those who are one of those two things. I can't tell the difference in my mind, but he essentially says, if I asked you, are you sure you're going to heaven, and your answer had anything to do with me, or you said I, right? That's the wrong answer, because it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with anything that you did, right? It's
Mhm.
not a you thing. And he goes on to explain, and this is again roughly 2,000 years ago to
Yeah.
this day on the
Mhm.
cross on Good Friday. Jesus is between two criminals. And, essentially the story goes that one of them mocks Jesus, the other one confesses his guilt, and just acknowledges that Jesus is innocent and asks to be remembered in his kingdom. And Jesus says, "You'll be with me in paradise," right? And when that guy gets to heaven, this pastor is explaining, people maybe are asking him, how did you get here? Did you do devotionals every day? Did you memorize the Bible? When did you get baptized? And this guy is like, no, I don't know what any of those things are. And they say, well, how are you here? How are you in heaven? And he just looks around and he points to Jesus and he says, that guy on the middle cross said I could come.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful to me. It gives me the chills because it's nothing you or I did, right? It's so much greater than us. And I hear that in your story, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah. That's good, man. And just the thief on the cross, man. Like literally, yeah, I mean, it gets me every time. It's just like, yeah, you literally have to like if your answer starts with the first person, like we've missed the whole point of the gospel. It is nothing that we did, is what he did on the cross. And your answer should never include I, ever, ever, with anything within this Christian walk.
So one of the other questions I like to ask people, and this is, the second to last question. It's a simple one. This is the Project Endure podcast. Things that you do, both fitness, faith, and otherwise, require endurance. What does the word endure or endurance mean to you when you hear it?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I would definitely say endurance, it just kind of ties back into discipline for me. It's showing up when it's would be easier not to. Because it ties back into my faith. It's like I want to live a life that is so glorifying to the Lord, but it is so easy to get caught up in that instant gratification of these just like things happening in your life. God's doing all these miracles and stuff, but you want to have a long faith rather than such a short-term faith, because when crap hits the fan, when life gets, you get punched in the face, like what are you going to turn to? And that shows who you're worshiping and who is the Lord of your life. And for me, it's just like I want to be so faithful in my walk with the Lord. So I would just say that word endurance is literally just showing up every single day when it is literally when it'd be easier not to. It ties into your physical and every single thing, and just knowing how harder but how obedient you have to be every single day by just surrendering to yourself and the desires of your flesh want every single day, and knowing that this life isn't about us, and just like actually choosing to keep going, like not because we want to live a life that's full of sunshine and rainbows and comfort and everything, but just like knowing that running your race well is going to be a long-term thing, and that's why I just like every single day, I don't know when God's going to call me home. So every single day that I'm just going to be faithful to whatever he has to me, whether it's a hard conversation, whether it's a run, like every single day, I'm going to honor and glorify God to the maximum capacity that I can do. And if not, like I've missed the mark, because if God wants to call me home and I spent my last day, running the rat race, or doing something that's going to try to glorify me or just put a crown on my head rather than lay it back at his feet, man, I've missed the entire mark. So just endurance is just running my race well, faithfully, just every single day, choosing to die to the desires of my flesh and just keep pressing and running my race truly well, and not looking down at my feet rather than looking straight ahead, toward the end goal, which is eternity. And I want to carry as many people as I can with me to heaven. And that's why my life is just on mission to make his name known and glorify him in all that I do.
Yeah. There's a great quote from Viktor Frankl, who said, I want to get this right, so I'm just going to pull it up real quick. What is to give light must endure burning. So, just like a candle, right? If you want to give
Mhm.
off light, you have to burn. And maybe in this context, burning is being disciplined, doing the hard things, putting your desires to the side to serve a greater purpose.
Mhm.
And I think this is a good reminder for anyone listening who is watching or comparing to other people on social media or just in your immediate life who look like they have it together, who look like, hey, Ed just ran 133 miles on a treadmill. He has it all together. It must be easy for him.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's enduring, right, the hard things, the
Yeah.
discipline, the obedience of the everyday ins and outs. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good reminder that if we want things in life that are meaningful, that are purposeful, that matter, we have to do hard things, and it's not always going to feel good. And I think that should be an encouragement to us.
100%. Yeah. That's so good, man. So good.
So, the last question that I ask everyone is my favorite because I think it's directly applicable to anyone who's listening. And so, there are people listening to this podcast all over the world who are going through all different kinds of things. Some of them are in really high places right now, and others in really low places. If you could speak right now to the people who are down in the dumps, feeling a bit lost, they're in a season of struggle, and you could share anything that you want to those people, what would you say?
Yeah. I would say don't quit. God is still working. He is working all things for the good of those who love him, and truly having that heart posture behind that. Um, just with like in the beauty of the life that we live, man, is in seasons, and I just tell people to make it to the next season. It's a hard season, but like what is God trying to teach you in this? And having that heart posture of willingness to learn rather than saying, "Whoa, it's me, why it's me." I mean, you look at the book of Isaiah, he's like one chapter, he's like, "Whoa, it's me," like, why, Lord, why, Lord? Literally a chapter later, he's saying, "Here I am, send me, like send me into the deep darkest places." So just having such a peace about that, like whatever you're going through, that struggle, like God is using it to write your story, and having that heart posture of that, of knowing that this isn't in vain. There's a reason for this that's happening to you. And rather than saying, like, I want to be done. I want to stop doing these things that you're in doesn't define your whole story. It's actually just being able, it's going to be like it's building your testimony, it's building your story, it's building the moments that's shaping you in this moment. And another thing I'll say is you don't have to carry it alone. A lot of people just want to carry these battles, these burdens alone, rather than just casting it all onto the Lord and just knowing and saying to people that God He's not distant in our struggles. He's so present in that. And we don't have to have these perfect words or these perfect prayers. It's just literally calling out to his name of God. I can't do this alone. And just bring it to him as we are and having such a beautiful, just awe and fear of the Lord, of who he is and what he promises us and the life that we have to come after this and how just quick and blink of an eye this side of heaven is. Like it gives you such a piece of that. And I didn't understand it for the longest time. And just telling people over and over and over that your life, your story has purpose and it matters and that you were loved and you were seen over and over and over. And just telling people that that hope that you're searching for, it's only found in Jesus and him alone. And it's not just a feeling, it's a person. And just knowing that you can cast all your worries and your burdens on him and he cares for us. So just telling people, man, and I love what you're doing with endure, man, because that word endure is so powerful and you can tie it into your spiritual walk, you can tie it into your physical endurance, man. You can tie it into every single thing that you go through because the word endure is so just like complex in so many ways. And I don't think a lot of people understand the magnitude of what endure actually means because every single day we have to endure in some shape or form. Whether that's a hard decision that we have to make a decision on the spot, a hard like whatever that is, man, we have to endure, and I just love what you're doing, man, and just love how you just brought that into fruition of having probably just an idea and turned it into a whole organization and community group, which is just so beautiful, man. So I just wanted to honor you in that and just tell you how cool that is of what you're doing with Project Endure.
Thank you, Ed. That really means the world. And I just wanted to say this is an audio podcast, so people aren't looking at either of us, but the way that your face lights up when you talk about Jesus is so special. And I really appreciate this conversation. I know that it's touched many people who are listening right now. And for people who want to just have more of your energy in their life, who want to follow along with what you're doing or just connect, where's the best place for people to do that?
Yeah, probably my Instagram. It's Iron Sned on Instagram. My DMs are always open. I have a tons of DMs right now, but I'm trying to go through every single one of them and be intentional with them. Um, but yeah, DM on Instagram, at Iron Sned.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you, Ed. I appreciate this conversation. I can't wait to see where life takes you next. And hopefully, our paths will cross in person at some point in the future.
Yes, sir, brother. I'm fired up, man. We definitely will make it happen here soon.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.